Okay. We're holding by Amar Rava on 127, Kuf Chav Zayin. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. In this class about learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. So we're learning the Nishma Savan Golden Basra Yamin, the son was Ben Mitzian, and the Torah Shlema or Avin David Ben Sarah. He gets a little yes, but the Kuf Chav Zayin 127. Right, where are you?
I think we stabbed the Kuf Chav Vav. So it was a number of, but that's what I'm just wondering. But if it's Kuf Chav Zayin, it's Amad Aleph on the case.
Amad Aleph.
So where's the Amar
Rava?
It is Amar Rava.
It's an Amar Rava Kuf Chav Zayin. It's the third line down from in the wide lines. It may be not. Maybe not a new Gemara in your Tanya Kavasei Rabami. Okay. We had some statements over here. The first statement that we had was from Rabami, talking about a tumtum, someone that was undetermined, unrevealed, if he was a male or a female. So the interesting halacha about him was that if he's firstborn, he doesn't get a firstborn portion, even if later on we find out that he's a male. Because we needed to have known that he was a male at the time of birth, not that you find out later. Well, Amar Rava Tani Kavasei Rabami. Rava says we have a brisa that supports Rabami. Rabami is an Amira. So if you have a brisa that supports that, that's stronger than just an Amira saying it. The brisa says like this: Ben v'loy tumtum. The pasuk, I'm going to need a chumash, but the pasuk says that v'haya bein abachar, son, and then the firstborn son. He's the one is going to get the double portion, even if he's from the hated wife, right? Is that in the state saying?
This is via Ahahuva Hasnua pasuk.
Yeah.
Yeah, the name Habena Bechor was.
What do you mean the mother becoming impure?
Like for the male, it's like
Yeah, that was Rabbi. Was that not Rav Shizvi? That was Rosh Rabbi. Right. Rabbi said that she does become impure. Not only that, she becomes impure for the male, for the female, and for neither, even though she gave birth. But it's not, specifically. Okay. So it says ben. In the pasuk it says ben. The Bach goes through exactly how it's learned over here. It says the word ben, v'lo yitumtum, and it's excluding the yitumtum. Where the bechar has to be an actual male at the time of birth. And then it says v'haya ben habechar. Then it says habechar. It says v'lei safek, and it can't be a doubt. That seems to be repetitive, because what type of doubt would there be? The doubt would probably be that he's a tumtum. What type of doubt are we referring to? So bishleim ben v'lei tumtum k'derabami. I get what we mean when we say ben v'lei tumtum. Well, that's an halacha that Rabami taught us as well, and he has a brisa. Now, sometimes we say, why do I need an amira to say it if I have a brisa to say it? But that's usually, why do I need an amira to say it if I have a mishnah that says it? A brisa, not necessarily they knew the brisa. It was like an unedited version, so not everyone had access to that. So okay, we found the support. So, and it's exactly what Rabami said. Ela bechar v'lei safek lafukei mai. But what is he coming to say? A bechar and not a suffix. Now, over here, what the Gemara is really asking is not that it's the same thing as Rabami. Here we're saying that it continues to be a suffix. And of course, a firstborn won't be able to claim extra money saying that, but maybe I'm a firstborn. because the other brothers are considered a muhsik, they definitely get the inheritance. And you come in and say that maybe I'm supposed to get more, and say, well, when you can prove that, then come back. But obviously a bechor would never, he needs to be definite, it can't be a doubt.
You get the normal portion.
Yeah, we'd get the normal portion, but you're claiming you're the firstborn. Different wives. So the birth order is a little bit yeah, we're not saying the father's not intervening here. So what are you coming to exclude? Of course he's not going to be able to claim an extra portion just because there's a possibility that he's the firstborn. It says lafuke midadarish Rava. This is very important because Rava taught exactly the opposite. Rava is quoting a brisa that's now proving another statement of him wrong. It says the Darish Rava taught shtei nashim sheyoldu bezacharim b'machva. There's two women that they gave birth to two sons and they were in hiding. Now they don't know exactly who was born first, so there's a doubt. So Rava came up with a solution, and the solution is, in other words, they want to get the double portion. So who's going to get it? So each one shows up and says, "Give it to me. I'm possibly the firstborn." They said, "No, we don't think it's you. Maybe the brother." So the brother shows up. They tell him the same thing. Maybe it's not you. Maybe it's the brother. So they don't have to pay it. So there's a solution for that. It's called the power of attorney. They not the power of an attorney, but each one does is he writes to the other one that you collected on my behalf. So that way, when he shows up, he says, "I'm not sure if it's you. I think it's your brother." They say, "Well, I'm here on behalf of my brother. So either way, you got to give it to me." And then they would step out and split it. So Rabba's solution was kaisvin harsha zelazeh. They do this power of attorney where they can collect for each other and then they get it. So since Rabba says that this should work, and it's logical that it should work, so now comes along the pasuk and tells me that it actually doesn't work. Because you can only collect it when we know for sure that it's you, not when there's another brother there and you're collecting on behalf of both of you. It doesn't work like that. It says bechar v'lei safek. Once there's a doubt, it's finished.
I see this being an issue with twins. Maybe
Yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah, it's a good point.
Who gave birth at home, and then they will go record birth whenever.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. There are older people that don't know exactly how old they are. They think they're this age and they're really a year off or something. Because the documents and papers and whatever during the war. Amrlei Rav Papa Rava. Rav Papa said to Rava, one of my kids got a COVID test. He needed to fly. He had to remember, and now he had to show these papers. Anyway, he didn't know exactly his English birthday that he put in over there. It's a disaster. He put in, whatever. I put in on a birthday, And then I'm like, you had to pull it up to get the records. Like, what day did you put in? If it's not your birthday, it could be anything. Okay. Yeah. No, well, he didn't use any, there was no system. He just said, July is whatever. Okay. So Amalei Rav Papa Rava, Rav Papa is a student of Rav. He says, Vashalach Ravin, how could you say that statement that Kaisvin Arshad, that you can use a power of attorney to collect? But Ravin, who was a traveler that came from Eretz Yisrael and would bring halachas, and very reliable, he says he sent the message that I asked about this. I asked all my teachers. They didn't say anything. Ram, however, Kacham Shem Rabbi Yanai, they said in the name of Rabbi Yanai, that if at the time of birth we actually knew who was the firstborn, and it was only later that we didn't know. Say, like in your case, Jonathan, there were twins. So we know one came out. He's the firstborn. Then another one came out. We know that he's the second born. Very good. And then in the crib, we forgot which side we put which each one on, and it's nisarvu. Nisarvu got mixed up. So now kaisvin hashab, because we actually knew it was just mixed up later, and that's acceptable. Loi hukru, but let's say it was the case where they're two different mothers, and they were each in hiding, and we don't know who was who. The sounds of crying, we didn't hear which baby cried first. So in case when then you're not allowed to. So in other words, what Rava said that it's not accurate because it's not in every case. It's only in a case where it was hukru, but in a case where it's loy hukru, where they never knew who was the firstborn, then they can't write the harsha. So Hadaruki Rava Meira Aleh Vidarash. Rava later on he taught, he put an interpreter, and he taught Varim Shamarti Lachem Tosabiyadi. The things that I said before that I taught was a mistake. Yeah. Tosabiyadi. Baram Kacham Mishum Rabbi Yanai, however, they said in the name of Rabbi Yanai, Hukru L'B'Seif Nesarvu. If they recognized who was the firstborn, like we said, the case with the twins, they knew who it was. Then they could write a power of attorney for each other to collect the firstborn. But if we didn't know ever who was the firstborn, then then they're not allowed to write that. Doesn't work. They can't collect it. And then the pasuk kicks in. The pasuk that says Bechar B'Leisafik, that's where it's going to take effect, and they won't be able to collect.
I've had something like this before. I don't remember exactly. Was it like an offering to the base of
They do this sometimes with offerings, where you don't know whose it is. You say if it was mine, then it's for me. If it's for you, and then they each bring an offering, and they each say the same thing.
At the end of the day, the result is the same. They'll split.
Yeah. Well, what's going to happen is they're going to split the extra portion.
Oh.
Sholchu lei b'nei Akra de Agma l'Shmuel. That's the name of a place, right? Akra de Agma. Do you have any note on that, like where it is, or it's just
There's no.
okay? Okay.
No, it says a region. It also said Mutzafara translated to mean a fort.
Oh, really?
Interesting.
Like Accra, like Accra was
Yeah,
a
it was a
fort. Fort. Interesting.
Yeah.
So Yilamdenu Rabbeinu, it asks Shmuel, teach us, our teacher. Let's say there is a child that we always understood that he was the firstborn. He had a whiter beard than the other brothers. We thought he's the firstborn. Not that there was any testimony. That was the assumption. That's what people said. He's the oldest. Father steps in and says, one of the other sons is the firstborn. Maho, what's the din? So we have the father's testimony against what the common understanding was, against the chazaka. So shalach lahu, he responded, kaisvin hasha zelazeh. They write a power of attorney, and it's a doubt. And so they collect one shows up and collects it, and on behalf of both of them, right? Says either it's me or the other guy. It doesn't matter. Just give it to me because I'm collecting for it.
It's only one power of attorney. One is writing it.
Yeah.
They each don't have the same.
Yeah, they each don't have to, right? Or they can't. But we're not saying which one has to do it for the other one.
No,
it could go either way.
Seems like the mother would know more about who's the firstborn, but we don't use her as an aid.
Sure.
In the case that both of them are hers. In the case that
yeah, and it's because that's a good point. Yonatan was saying that the mother should know who's the firstborn more than the father, but Hillel commented. We have a whole Talmudic discussion here. Hillel commented. He said, "But it's not the mother. It's not the mother's firstborn, it's the father's firstborn. It's the firstborn of the father. That's the significant. There could have been another firstborn that he had somewhere else. You can't leave it up to the mother.
Also, she can't be an 8 here, can she?
Well, she can't be an 8 anyway. But
Right.
he's asking is, shouldn't she be able to be the 8 because she's the one that should really know? Well, the Gemara asks on Shmuel's answer. He says, Manavsha. Either way you look at this, Shmuel, there's a problem with what you're saying. Ikar Rabbanan Svirale, if you hold like the Rabbanan, so which we didn't learn yet, by the way. The Shalachlu Karabanan, then why don't you respond what the Rabbanan say? Ikar Rabbi Yehuda Svirale, if you hold like Rabbi Yehuda, which we didn't learn yet. So the Shalachlu Rabbi Yehuda, then why don't you respond what Rabbi Yehuda said? The Gemara answers, Mesafkale Ikar Rabbi Yehuda Karabanan. Shmuel had a doubt. Is it like Rabbi Yehuda? Is it like the Rabbanan? And because of that, he said, which is the power of attorney, and you cover all your bases. Gemara now says, Ma'hi, what was that machlekes, Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda that you were discussing, that you mentioned? The Tanya was taught in a brisa. This is a famous Gemara. It's quoted often. And it goes like this. Yakir. Pasuk says, over here, Let me give you the translation. Rather, he must acknowledge the firstborn, the son of the one whom he hates. And give him a double share of his. He cannot say that I'm giving it to the one that I love, the son of one. He has to acknowledge. Yakir means to recognize. He has to recognize the son of the. And when it says Yakir, that he has to recognize, Gemara tells us Yakirenu la'acheir means that he has to make it recognizable to others. It means we trust him to tell who's the firstborn. This gives him the right to say who's his firstborn son.
Why don't you say Yakir is like your car? Is that spelled?
That's like precious or heavy.
Yeah, it's precious.
Yeah, that's with a kuf.
Yeah, that's why I realized
Yeah.
Cuff, you know. Cuss, yeah, but
Right.
So how do we trust the father in this case? If he could have the motive to go
Right.
with the favored wife.
Right.
firstborn.
Right. And the
Firstborn.
halacha is that we have to give him, or that he has to be the one to tell us who is his firstborn. And we learn that from the pasuk of Yaakov. No, this,
But it's not
this-
always in
this-
his
and even though it may not be his best interest, but yeah,
it's what's it called, the honor system kind of?
father's trusted who's the son and who's his.
Why is it kind of like implied that he's gonna hate the first wife?
No, it started off with Kisiena lishteinash machasu v'chasnua.
The firstborn, the son of the hated wife. So it's like,
Yeah, it's saying if a man has two wives, one who he loves, one who he hates, so and the one who he hates, he gives him a son. At first, it's so interesting because like the Leah story.
that's what I was thinking. Like that happened there, but does it always happen like that?
No, this is if, right? Yeah,
Second wife.
the Torah is not predicting that if you have two wives, the first one, the one that you hate, is going to give you a child first. That's not what the law of
You
the
want to
Torah.
take a second.
That's another point.
That's probably what happened.
So Mikan Amar Rabbi Yehuda. We're getting some dating advice over here. Mikan Amar Rabbi Yehuda. From here, Rabbi Yehuda taught. Rabbi Yehuda said, "Naman Adam Laimar Zebni Bachar." A person is trusted to say, "This is my firstborn son." Okay, that the father has the rights to say that. Ukashem shenaman Adam Laimar Zebni Bachar. Just like a father can say, "It's my firstborn son," he can also say, "Kach neman Adam Laimar Zeben Grusha Zeben Chalutza." He can also say that this child, even if the father's a kohen, he can say he's a chalal because his mother was divorced. Now, well, how would that work? Well, could be the father had married her, divorced her. They got back together, and people didn't know, was it the child from after the divorce before? The father's trusted to say, This child was conceived after the divorce, after the second. Follow. Say, and he's trusted. And by the chalutza, the Kohen was not supposed to marry a chalutza, and that's like a rabbinic. But nevertheless, we say that he's a halal rabbinically. That's it. Right. Right.
It's a child.
Child would be a halal. Well, Chachamim remain in Eman. The Chachamim say no, the father's not believed. Now, what we're talking about over here is that when we have a chazaka, who the firstborn son is, and then the father steps in to tell us, no, that chazaka is not accurate. So Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that we trust the father. And the Chamzin opinion is that we trust the chazaka. The father's not believed against the chazaka because we had an assumed always all the years. Chazaka makes a very big difference. In cases of when people come, they're Jewish. There's a huge difference if they always thought they're Jewish. You know, we have to look into their background. You say, how do you know you're Jewish? So my mother told me. How does your mother? Well, she spoke Yiddish or something. You know, my grandmother spoke Yiddish, something like that. If they were always told that they were Jewish, then it's a clear case. Grandmother speaks Yiddish, and if they come in and say, you know, I'm 16 years old, I'm 20 years old, and my grandmother just told me that that we're Jewish. Totally different story. Now it's against the chazaka. He never assumed that he was Jewish. It becomes much more complicated.
People who are told also at a young age that they are Jewish. Also have.
They told that they are, yeah. Well, that's very hurtful. They have to go through a conversion, and that's very hurtful the other way also. But, okay. So Amar Le. So basically, what we're holding here is that Shmuel said that if there's a conflict between a chazaka, if who's the firstborn versus the father's testimony, who's the firstborn, they have to split it by this power of attorney. And the Gemara said, but there's a clear machlekes, Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda. What do you, if you follow the chazaka or you follow the father? So it's a Shmuel had a doubt. How do you paskin? That's no, we're good, all good. Everything's answered. The Gemara now says, Amalei Rav Nachman by Yitzchak l'Rava. Nachman Yitzchak says to Rava, Bishleim l'Rab Yehuda Hainu d'Ksiv Yaker. I get why the pasuk says Yaker, that the father has to recognize, which means that he's able to say who's the firstborn, even against the chazaka. El Rabbanan, Yaker Lamali. What do the Rabbanan do with Yaker? According to the Rabbanan, you don't trust the father. So what's the pasuk of Yaker telling me that the father makes recognizable who's the firstborn? The Gemara says, B'tzarech hakera. Okay, now let me explain what's happening here. The Gemara itself will spell it out. Sorry? When there's no chazaka, exactly. What it's talking about here is that if there was no chazaka against, who was the firstborn, here we're saying that we thought that one Reuven was the firstborn. Comes along, the father says that it's Shimon. But if we didn't have any chazaka, then the father has the rights, even according to the Rabbanan, to determine if it was Reuven or Shimon that's the firstborn. Okay. Lamai Hilchasa, what do you mean that b'tzarech hakera? Lameis v'lei pishnayim, to give him a double portion. So the Gemara says, why do I need the akir to do that? Lo yehei ela acher. Ilu boy lameis v'lei b'matanim ila yoevlei. I don't need a pasuk to do that. The father, if the father wants to give him a firstborn a double portion, the father can give him a gift. Now, if he's able to give him a gift, if he wants to, so he should be neman b'migu. Migu, if I wasn't true, I would have, right? Just like Migu means just as, just as he's able to give it to him as a gift. Now he's trusted to say that you get it as a firstborn. I don't need the pasuk. Yeah, you should have a migu. The Gemara says, we're talking about where he got possessions. See, there's a little bit of a catch over here. If he's able to, look, what the Gemara is going to look for here is a case where he doesn't have the ability to give it to him as a gift. He doesn't have the ability to give it as a gift, and he's still trusted to give it to him. He's still trusted to give it to him because he's the firstborn. Anything that he could have given to him as a gift, anything that's in his possession, I don't need the pasuk to tell me that he can give it to him as a firstborn, as a double portion, because he could have given it to him before. He can give it to him as a firstborn, so with that he's automatically trusted. So what I'm looking for, the way to resolve this, where do I need the pasuk of Yakir, is for some reason he couldn't have given it to him as a gift. So we could say, with a simple answer, well, he got it after he died. But if he gets it after he dies, he doesn't get it as a firstborn, because that's considered roi. That's not muhsik. That's only potential, right? We learned before that a firstborn son doesn't get a double portion on things that came later. So we have to somehow find a way where the father can't give it as a gift, even though he gets it while he's alive, and nevertheless he's trusted to say he's a firstborn.
The only case is where he's not inherited. Before that, as long as the person is one of the person that received inheritance.
No, there was an opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Breika where he would be able to do that, but without Rabbi Yochanan ben Breika. Rabbi Yochanan ben Breika, that's talking about an inheritance, but without the inheritance, just to give a gift before he passes away. He's allowed to give any gifts he wants. He could spend his money. Right? The children usually don't want him to, but
I understand if he hasn't passed away and he's giving gifts. What is the whole question of Mishnah?
That's right.
Come up.
The father's testifying before he passes away. Who's his firstborn son? At that time, he can also say, "Take my, my Rolls Royce."
You do whatever.
He can do whatever he wants. So the fact that we trust him, that he says this is the firstborn son, I don't need a pasuk to say that. Because if he wanted to give it to him without saying he's the firstborn son, he could just give it to him right now. So we have to figure out a way why we need the pasuk. Okay. What we're saying is that after he testified that he's the firstborn son, he got other possessions. The Gemara says, according to Reb Meir, where a person can gift things that he doesn't have yet, he can gift them. So he can gift them already even before. So he can gift them for later. The Gemara answers, okay, now, usually we talk about matna shchiv mira. Shchiv mira is someone that's on his deathbed, that whatever he says is considered given even without a kinyan, right? Now we're not talking about that. We're talking about at a later stage where the person is on his deathbed and he can't even talk. Now the rule is over there, he's alive, right? And he can inherit from other people, right? Let's say someone passed away and he can inherit them. So for those things where he's not able to gift at that point, now why can't he gift according to Reb Meir? The reason is
the other person didn't die.
You can only, but maybe according to Reb Meir, even things that you didn't get, you can already gift them.
Maybe you won't give it.
Yeah. So anyway, whatever the case is, he says he's only able to do that if he has the power to be able to, if he receives it at the time when he's able to speak. But a guy says he's on his deathbed, he's not able to speak, so therefore he can't give it over before he gets it. It has to come into his hands while he's able to talk. Okay, so what we're saying now is that there is a possibility of where he does inherit something before he passes away. He doesn't have the ability to give it to him as a gift because he's a geisis. And nevertheless, he is able to give it to him because it's a first. He says he's a firstborn son. There's no migu. Basically, we got out of the migu. He can give it to him any other way. He can't give it to him, but he's able to give it to him because of Yaakov, because he says that he's the firstborn son. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan. Start in a brisa.
Is he really giving? I know we used to from Yaakov. Is he really giving it to him, or he just
No, we trust him.
identified
He's
him,
identifying him.
and the Bechor is now taking what's duly his?
Yeah, he's identifying him. Tanu Rabbanan. Start in a brisa. If we had assumed that this was always the firstborn, the father says, Reuven, he's not the Bechar. He always thought he was the Bechar, but no, it's Shimon. Naaman. Father's belief. Who held that? Rabbi Yehuda. It's Rabbi Yehuda's view in the last Gemara. His name is Shimon, right? We never thought he was the Bechar. Amar Aviv, and the father says, Becharu, the father says he's the firstborn. Ain't a Naaman. It's not believed. What's going on over here? He said before that he is believed. How does that work? Now you're passing like the Rabbanan. Gemara says, yeah, Reisha Rabbi Yehuda v'Sefer Rabbanan. Gemara doesn't seem to have any problem with that. Says, yeah, these two statements here, one is Rabbi Yehuda, one is the Rabbanan, and the Brisa was a collection. Doesn't match up exactly. Sometimes it does this as a question. The Gemara sometimes says, Reisha Rabbi Yehuda v'Sefer Rabbanan. And then the Gemara has to elaborate and explain something. But over here, it just says it as a statement. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, the first was a brisa. Now Rabbi Yochanan is Amira. He comes in, he says, Amar Benihu. He says, this boychik, he's my son. Chazav Amar Abdihu. Then he says, this fellow, he is my slave.
That's the same guy.
Same guy. Einay Naaman. He's not trusted because he already told us that he's a son. Now he's not trusted to say he's a slave. Because if it was a slave, he never would have called him a son. You never show such endearment for a slave.
You can't have your own child be a slave.
Right.
Try.
So it can't be.
You could.
Unless you're a sham.
So we say like this. Even Shehigid, Shavei Nechazer Magid. Once you already told us that he's the son, then you can't now tell us that he's a slave. So when it says Einay Naaman, he's not Naaman to switch what he had said originally, that he's a slave. Let's say he says Abdihu, he says he's my slave. Then he says he's my son. So then he is Naaman, then he is believed. It's a little problematic because I thought you told me that. Make sure you're up to the same places. I want to tell you, you're ahead. Yeah, that's another Gemara. So he says first he's my slave, and then he says he's my son. We trust him with the second statement that it's really a son. So the Gemara explains, what did he mean when he said he's my slave? He says the Mishamashli ka'avda kamar, that he serves me like a slave. It means he's such a good child. He serves me like that. So that's what he meant. Notice he's explaining what he meant originally when he said slave. He was able to explain that. So he's able to explain that he's a son, even though he said he's a slave. But you won't be able to explain that he's a slave, even though he called him a son.
What if it's born from his shifcha, the relationship?
It's a slave.
Isn't it the son also?
No. It's not considered related to him. That's the idea. Because it's not his. She's not 100% Jewish. So. bringing up if it was born from a shifcha, so it'd be a slave and his son. I'm saying it's not. Then it's not his son if it's a slave.
I don't have any shifts.
Sounds illegal. Slavery today against the. It's got to be against something. It didn't. It's not. It's in the Constitution.
It's against the Constitution.
It's only allowed when the government does it.
Kids,
Okay.
kids are slave.
Okay.
Nowadays,
Listen to your
parents are
parents.
slaves to children.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
it's a family share.
Now we're saying that the opposite would be the case. The halach would be exactly the opposite if a person, when it comes to paying taxes, person has to pay taxes on his on what he owns. He doesn't have to pay taxes on his kids, but he has to pay taxes on his slaves. So he would say it exactly opposite. He's passing over maybe a toll booth or a tax something. Amar Benihu says it's my son. And then he says it's actually my slave. So then Neman, then we're going to trust him that it's a slave, because why would he say it's a slave? He's going to have to pay extra taxes. It must be that's what he said before Beni. I don't know what he meant, but why did he say Beni?
It's under 13 admission free.
Maybe he was afraid of the tax.
No, he's only 12. Tell him you're 12. But you told me at the line. Tell him you're 12.
Yeah. Let's say first he said he's my slave, and then afterwards he says he's my son. Then we don't trust him because you see he's trying to avoid the taxes. They called the Freudian slip. It's my slave. It's my son. Okay. Meisvei, who has a question? Let's say he was doing the things that a son would do. There's different types of services that a son would do for a father. He walks him, he helps him walk, he helps him get up, he puts on his jacket, it does those things. He serves him some food, but not what a slave does. A slave does does different types of work. So if he was serving him like a son, and he says, he's my son, and then he changes his mind, he says he's my slave. He's not believed. Okay, that we had before, that's no problem, right? Let's say we're serving him like a slave, doing these extra type of services. He says he's my slave. And then he changed his mind, he says he's my son. So, in the last case, before, Rabbi Yochanan said, in such a case, we would say that he's Neman. And here we say, Einay Neman, he's not believed. Last time we said that the reason why he called him a slave was because he serves me like a slave. But really he's his son. Now we're saying, no, we don't believe him.
Last case, he just said that, but we didn't see that it's under that.
It seems to be exactly the same case. Why was he calling him an Eved? Because he was serving him like an Eved, but really he's my son. And we said that was the explanation. He's really his son, and he called him an Eved because he was like a good son. He served him like a slave. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak answers this question on Rabbi Yochanan. He says, "Hasam dekar le'avda meitzer meya." Meya, my meitzer meya. He called him this. It's a longer name. Avda meitzer meya, a slave that his border is $100. My meitzer meya. What does it mean? His border is $100. Meitzer avda kufzuz. The parameter of the slave is $100, which means that he has the value of $100. He's a $100 slave. Now that would be, if you're giving him a price, that means that you're actually talking about a slave. When afterwards you call him a son, if you call him a son, he's my slave. You would never put a price on that. The fact that there was a price means that he had a certain value. It means he actually was a slave. Now you can't change your mind. We don't have the explanation anymore of why he was calling him. Okay.
Son would be priceless.
Yeah.
So,
Shalach le Rabba le Rab Yosef bar Chama. Rav Abba sends to Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama. Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama is the father of Rava. Yeah, not the Rabbi Yosef that usually we talk about. Rabbi Yosef and Rav Sheshes and Rabba. Rabbi Yosef and Rabba. This is Rava's father.
Charted out, Dr. Stan?
He's not on the chart. If someone tells to his friend, this is it changes topic a little bit, but it gets back into it. So, but anyway, Avdi Ganafta. Someone tells his friend, you stole my slave. He says, I didn't steal him. He says, Mativas, why do you have him? He says, you sold him to me. You gave him to me as a gift. He says, if you want, you can swear that you didn't do that and you can take it. Now, that was a big mistake to say that. When it comes to court, you never say anything extra. He made an extra comment there. V'nishba, so the guy takes him up on the offer and he swore. You can't say, I retract. It's too late. Too late. You gave him the option of swearing. Now, the truth is, you don't swear when it comes to slaves. There's a few things that you don't swear about. Karka, you never make an oath over land, and also about slaves, and also about documents. But he didn't have to say anything over here. He had possession of it, of the slave. And he said, the guy says, why is he by you? He has a chazaka, 3 years. The slave is by him, whatever, long enough that no one relied. He had possession. You don't have to say this. He added it in. That means he gave him this option to do this. It's too late. My kamashval Antonina. What do I need Rabbi Ami to say that? Rabbi Abba to say this? This is a Mishnah. Amalai nemanalai Abba nemanalai Avicha nemanalai Shleishrei Bakar. Two people are having an argument. They say, well, let's go ask. Instead of saying, let's go to Bezdin. They say, let's go ask some of them. We'll do whatever he says. He says, I trust you, whatever your father says. Surprising, but he'll trust, but that's good. Nemanalai, you're the other father. Let's go ask the shepherds what they say. This is how today you can use in a Bezdin, you can use other people, even if they're not Dayanim. You can have one person there that knows the halacha and other people or whatever. Even if you have 3 people that don't know the halacha, they sign a document, start Beirin, that these judges will judge. They say, but maybe he's not really a rabbi. His smicha he got from the. It doesn't matter. You chose him. You trusted him at the beginning. You can't back out of that now. Yeah, Tosh Nadarim doesn't work with agreements that you made to other people. And yeah, that only helps with the loan and to recollect the shmita. Reb Meir says you could retract. We're following the Chachamim. So why do I need Rababa to tell me that if he says, I trust you, if you swear, I'll give it to you? We have a Mishnah that says, if he says, I trust you, if your father says, I trust you, if your 3 shepherds say, of course we trust him. Now, there were 2 ways of looking at this machlekes. I trust you. We're going to trust 3 shepherds. There's 2 ways of looking at this machlekes. You see, I have a teveya and a nitva. I have the that's claiming, and I have the defendant. Yeah, the plaintiff is claiming. Is that what you call him? And the defendant. So the teveya, the one that's claiming, he could tell the defendant that I'll trust you if you swear. Okay, and then the person, basically what he's doing is, I'll be Michael my claim. I'm not going to take anything away. I'll just leave it. Or it could be the other way. Or it could be where the defendant is telling the one that's claiming, he says, I'll let you take it if you swear. I could have learned that this machlekes was going on when he's letting him keep it if he swears. And then we would say that if he's going to take it, then maybe that's a different story. Then maybe no one agrees that he can extract it just because he says, I'll say he could retract from taking it away. So the Gemara says no. The Gemara says what Rabab is telling me is that the machlokes is be'etein lach. Even if you're going to take it away from me, you still can't retract. Now, it's not machlokes. I had two ways of learning it. Which scenario was it talking about? And so Rabab is telling me it's talking about the scenario where the person says, I'll let you take it away from me if you swear. But if it would be the opposite way, where the guy would say, I'll let you keep it, so then even Reb Meir would agree that even Reb Meir would agree that you could retract. Let you keep it.
It's both the chazaka and speaking who swear.
Even Reb Meir would agree that you can't retract. That's what even Reb Meir would agree that you can't retract. Okay, if it would go the other way. So it could go different ways over here, but here we're talking about where the person that owns it, the person that has possession of it, tells the other guy, "I'll let you extract it from me if you swear." And we're saying that that's where the machlokes is, and that's where the chachamim would say this at this point.
And the other way of learning is like the guy that wants to figure it out.
Other way of learning it would be where the person that's claiming it says, "If you swear to me, I'll let go of my claim," and then the person can retain it. So then the chachamim say that he can't retract. That's the other way of learning the machlokes. Okay, Shalach le Rababa le Rabbi Yosef bar Chama. The next statement of Rababa to Rabbi Yosef bar Chama. Halacha gave him an avadim. Now, this is if orphans owed money, their father owed money, and when you come collect from orphans, you can only collect from land. So we have a comparison between slaves and land when it comes to swearing. So he says, well, if they collect from land, you can also collect from slaves. Now, the background to this understanding is that when a person borrows money, he knows that that when a person lends money, he knows that he has property that he can collect from. So there's sort of like a lien on that property when he borrowed it. So what he's suggesting here is that he's also a lien on those slaves, that he can go in and take those slaves. Rav Nachman says no, that only applies to property, because property people look at, and also when they purchase property, the person knows that if there's a debt, I'm going to lose it, right? And there has to be a title, inheriting slaves, and now a creditor of the father comes in, is collecting from those slaves. Nachman says no. I know there's a comparison between slaves and land, but that's only regarding taking oaths and specific things, but not regarding the lien on the slaves when it comes to that's the pasuk that tells me that slaves are compared, but not regarding what the person had in mind when he lent him the money, that there's a lien on those slaves.
The monetary.
Well, yeah, they have monetary value. The question is if you can extract them from orphans.
Because it's land.
Because metaltlin, you can't take metaltlin from orphans. You can only take the land. Yeah,
but
in the land. You can take from.
The bank comes, you take
a
picture.
Yeah.
But if the loan was made while the borrower was alive, and then he was thinking of maybe collecting from property.
Yeah, but you can't, since you can't collect from the orphans at all. But the property is assumed that it's already in his possession, because since it's already there and there was a lien on it, it's as if it was collected. That's the benefit of the property. So Shalach le Rababa le Rabbi Yosef bar Chama. Rababa sent another halacha to Rabbi Yosef bar Chama. Halacha shlishi b'sheni kasher. Now we're talking. What time is Shachris? Okay, so let's just finish this point. The halacha is when it comes to testimony, a father, they can't testify against the son, or it becomes a bias. They're not acceptable as witnesses. So, but what about cousins? So now we're talking about cousins are also not accepted as witnesses, but this is
On the south.
a second cousin once removed.
Oh,
So if I have Reuben and Shimon are first generation, I know Reuben's son is Chanoich, Shimon's son is Yemuel. So Chanoich and Yemuel are not acceptable either. But Chanoich's son, he can testify against Yemuel. He's a Shlishi, he's the third generation. He can testify against a second generation. Okay. That's acceptable. Rava Amar Af Barishan. Rava says that he can even go back up one generation. He can testify against his great uncle, against Shimon, Shlishi Barishan. Marbar Ravashi says, Achshar ba'aba da'aba. He says he can testify against his grandfather. It's only a father and son. The Gemara says, V'les yilchasa k'marbar Ravashi. The halacha, it doesn't follow Marbar Ravashi. Okay? Sounds like that the halacha is that he can testify against his great uncle, though. Okay, let's leave it over here.
oh, just getting fun.
Happy birthday, Dr. Stein.
Yeah, happy birthday, Dr.
Happy
Stein.
birthday, Dr. Stein.
Yeah, you can make it
Is there,
8:30 tonight for bringing to my house.
8:30
Fried chicken
tonight.
or no fried chicken?
Taco block the
I'll bring the
Fried chicken or no fried chicken?
sushi.
Oh, fried chicken, baby.
Watermelon.
Buckets.
Sushi.